Welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast for practice owners and leaders, where we are obsessed with how to build a successful practice and get a life too. Hi, I'm Chuck Blakeman, and we're going to dive into another topic that helps us make more money in less time, get off the treadmill, and rehumanize dentistry by giving everybody their brain back. Today, I'm talking with Dr. Lance Miller. He's the owner and orthodontist at Keene Orthodontic Specialists in Keene, New Hampshire. Dr. Lance attended dental school at the University of North Carolina and completed a residency at St. Louis University, where he graduated with an MS degree and specialty certificate in orthodontics. He is the sole owner and orthodontist at Keene Orthodontic Specialists, which has 3 locations in southwestern New Hampshire and southeastern Vermont. He runs a local chapter of Smile for a Lifetime and is a member of the Association of Orthodontists and the American Dental Association. And he's married with 2 children, and his hobbies include skiing, golfing, and watching UNC and BYU athletics. Dr. Lance, it's great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me on the podcast, Chuck. I'm a big fan of yours, and it's a real honor to be talking with you a little bit more today.
Very same. Looking forward to hearing more about how we can get people connected to your podcast. So let's dive right in. Today, I want to talk about integrating your personal, professional, and family goals. We talk a lot about the getting people off the treadmill. And I speak all over dentistry about the idea that we've mistakenly separated work and our personal lives ever since the factory. I've got a third book I'm working on called Rehumanizing the Workplace by Giving Everybody Their Brain Back. And the problem is that the factories, for the first time in the history of humanity, we went to work and we separated work and our personal lives. And this whole separation began to be something that we thought of as normal, when in fact it's really freakish. We've only done it for 175 years. And we've got to figure out how to reintegrate our lives. It's not about balancing what we're doing at home and with what we're doing at work. It's about reintegrating the two and using our practices to build our ideal lifestyle in support of our lifetime goals. So that's kind of I'm a nut about this stuff. And I really think that the dentists need to learn more about how to use their practice instead of being used by it. You seem to have some interest in that as well. So I thought it'd be fun to talk about personal, professional, and family goals. Let me just start out by giving you an opportunity to give an overview of what you mean by how you integrate personal, professional, and family.
Yeah, it's one of the things that really attracted me to dentistry is the ability to balance, a family life and a professional life. And it's also something that really drew me to the community where I practice. Keene, New Hampshire is a smaller town of about 25,000 people, but it's quite remote. It's kind of removed from other communities. And as a result, has this kind of tightly knit vibe here that my wife and I were immediately attracted to when we moved here. So one thing that I really enjoy is being here and being able to go to work and see my patients, but then being able to see them at the restaurant and at the soccer game and all over town, and to be involved in charitable organizations. And as you mentioned, not to have a huge separation between my professional work life and the rest of my life. I'm going tonight to a science night at my daughter's elementary school, where we'll be talking a little bit about dental anatomy, and I'm not exactly sure what, but to be involved in that way. So I think when we think about what we want to do as dentists, if we really start and try to envision what kind of a lifestyle we want, we don't always ask ourselves that question. But if we do, we find that a lot of times, if we give ourselves permission, we actually have the tools at our disposal to use our practice, I think, to kind of move ourselves in that direction, have a lifestyle that we enjoy, that can be profitable. It can be very financially successful, but also can fulfill some of our other hobbies, interests, family obligations, all of those things. I think I don't really have a lot of experience with other professions, but I do know for a fact that dentistry really lends itself to that.
Yes, it does. And I know a lot of dentists who have gone into dentistry specifically for that. My dad was he was a general doctor or whatever, and I saw him being called out in the middle of the night, or and this provides an opportunity for you to get a little more control over your schedule and build something that will actually serve you. The problem with that is a lot of times I see that way too many dentists have not really taken advantage of that. It was one of the reasons they went into dentistry, but when they got into the practice, it got to be where the practice owned them. They don't own the practice. And something happened there. Something turned around. And all of a sudden they woke up one day and said, what am I doing? I'm a hostage to this thing.
Yeah, I think we start out in dentistry, a little bit under the gun, right? We graduate with a lot of student loans, perhaps. We have perhaps a young family that we're supporting. We have this, I think, inferiority complex as a young doctor of trying to prove ourselves. Yeah. And so at that stage in the game, we're really kind of doing everything we can to make it work and to really earn our stripes. And I think there are some people that never really transition out of that mode. At some point we have to look around and say, is this life I imagined? Can I do things a little bit differently? Can I prioritize things in a different way? I'm all for hustling and working and grinding it out. And I did that for a couple of decades. But at a certain point, I had to say, this is the one life that I get, and how do I want it to work? And how can I kind of reevaluate my priorities? So I think you have to have that discussion with yourself. You have to be able to, take a moment and then give yourself permission to make changes that maybe seem strange. Maybe your family thinks are strange, or that your staff feels, this isn't the way the senior doctor or the doctor down the street does it. So you have to be willing to make changes in order to kind of get where you want to be.
Yeah. Well, it's so true, but you're right. I think a lot of us go into any business with the what I would call survival mode. You pictured it fairly well. I've got a bunch of kids. I've got loans. I want to prove myself, and so we go into survival mode and we hunker down. And the problem, Dr. Lance, is that it works, or at least we think it works. It appears to work. Hey, this is working for me. I'm making money. I'm growing my practice, but there's something missing. And sometimes we have to come to the end of ourselves. And sometimes it takes a very long time. I went through 5 businesses. I built 12 businesses in 8 industries. And I went through 5 of them before I finally got tired of the idea that all I'm doing every time I build a business is I just build a faster treadmill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the more successful the business was, the more the treadmill spun. And I see that with dentists as one of the reasons we focused solely on dentistry. Is, as you said, this is an industry or a vocation, a profession that is set up ideally to be used to build an ideal lifestyle. And yet so many people are doing it the other way. They never got out of survival mode. It worked for us. And so we just keep doing it. And we got to have that little meeting with ourselves. We talk about the 7 stages of business ownership. And stage 4 is where you're finally profitable. That's what we call the American dream. But we all know that's the American nightmare, because now you own a job, you're making enough money to buy a hot tub and go on vacation, but you have no time.
Right.
It has taken all of your time. And we assume that when we make a bunch of money, we'll somehow be happy. But the missing element is time. How do we use that money? How can we use that money? I know a lot of guys who own boats who can't use them. So we've got to figure out how to do that. So how long into your practice were you before this began to dawn on you that you're on a treadmill and you got to figure this out?
I think 5 years in, I think the first 5 years were pretty much, hunkering down. Yep. And it's only in the last 3 or 4 years that I've really started to make these, sorts of evaluations and decide what I want. It's, growth, like you mentioned, is a double-edged sword, especially in an industry where we are the provider of the services. There are certain things I can delegate to my team members, and we take advantage of that in order to manage that growth. But there are other things that I can't. I'm putting on every set of braces. I'm taking off every set of braces. I'm doing every treatment plan. And do I want to start more cases this year than last? I do. But how do I do that in a way that doesn't just kind of drive me crazy? I think there are some other practice models out there that exist for people trying to solve that solution. I'm trying to figure out how to do this as a solo doctor. That's kind of the vision that I have for myself, and not, go into a more multi-location, multi-doctor, multi-specialty model, which I know is popular. But, you have to be careful that in all of the growth, you don't just, as you put it, get yourself running faster and faster and dreading your days more and more. and not being able to block off time for your hobbies and interests and family.
So one of the things that helps us get there is figuring out what we really love doing. There's two major aspects to dentistry. There's the business side and there's the clinical side.
Right.
And in order to get a practice to serve us, we got to figure out how to meet both of those needs. Too often we're trying to do both of those. What have you learned along your journey about how to work with those two major aspects of a practice and not have that thing take you over?
Part of it is working on systems, developing procedures so that I can get some of the more routine things off my plate. Certainly some of that is hiring and empowering employees. That's something I feel like I still have a lot to learn about, and an area where I could improve. Some of it is carving out time. I used to see patients 5 days a week, clinical hours, Monday through Friday. Now I see patients 4 days a week. But on a day like today, I was in the office this morning and I was, reviewing some stuff with my financial coordinator, have time to do things like this podcast and some other development work. So taking time, the sharpening the saw, concept, I think is important. And you can get yourself busy enough clinically that you don't have time to do any of those things as well.
And you will wear yourself out. Yeah, that's an important piece of this. One of the things that I found in helping dentists grow their practices is the money side is actually the easier side. None of it's easy. But if you ask a dentist, what do you think is easier to pull out of your practice, time or money? Which one is it easier for your practice to generate? And they'll all say, well, neither one is easy, but definitely money. It's much easier to generate money than it is time. Why is that? Why do we get trapped in that notion that it's just easier to get the money, but we can't seem to get the time?
Part of it is, I think, as healthcare professionals, as doctors, we kind of hold ourselves to a different standard, I think, than other businesses. And we try to make ourselves available to our patients. We try to serve their needs. I think these are all noble things and intentions that we have. Things that I try to do, but I think at a certain point, it gets carried a little bit too far, and we lose that ability to be there for our patients because we've run ourselves into the ground. And so, that I think is a little bit of an exacerbating factor in healthcare for sure. I think we have to be careful a little bit with that.
You hit on that. You hit a nerve with that one, Dr. Miller, because that idea of sharpening the saw is not just about sharpening the saw. It's also about sharpening your energy, giving yourself the opportunity to build memories with your family. There's all sorts of things we miss when we become hostages to our practice. And it reminded me of something my best friend says to me once in a while. He lives in Belfast, Ireland. And in his Irish brogue, he says, Chuck, the problem with you is you give from your root when you should give from your fruit.
Yeah.
And it's a great symbolism. Someone knocks on your door and says, hey, you've got an apple tree. Can you help me start an apple tree? And you say, sure, let's go out back and I'll chop you off some roots, because that's the best way to get it started. Well, you do that 8 or 10 or 15 times and your tree falls over and you can't help anybody ever again.
Right. It's interesting because that's also, there's a lot of discussion in dentistry. I think it stems from a kind of an underlying dissatisfaction with, people's lifestyle and their work-life balance. This concept of I'm going to retire early. I'm going to build a practice that's highly successful or a big DSO, and I'm going to sell it. Or maybe I'm just going to scrimp and save, whatever it takes. I'm going to do this and then I'm going to get out. And to me, that never really appeals to me. I am very interested in financial independence, but I'm very not interested in retiring early. I'm trying to decide, how can I balance things in my life so that I can create something sustainable? Certainly when it comes to being able to treat lots of patients and help them, which also then is rewarding to me and continues to provide fulfillment to me as I interact with more and more people and develop those relationships. Also financially, it's, this retiring early concept is pretty difficult, the math on it. How can I do something that I can want to do, that I'm excited to do for 20 or 30 years, maybe you hate dentistry and it's just the wrong profession and you should leave. But maybe it's, the fact that you're a little bit out of balance. And if you can do that, if you can work at 60% of what you're doing now for 30 years versus going 110% for the next 7 and then retiring, I'm more in the camp of trying to build something sustainable, a life that I enjoy now and later. So that's, been a big focus for me.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And too many people just don't think that way. We're from the days where we were trying to worry about where the next mastodon would come from. We're very short-term thinkers. That's the way we view the world. And it's hard for us to think about what we need to be doing 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. And all of a sudden we wake up 2, 5, and 10 years from now, we're in the same place we were 2, 5, and 10 years ago. And we wonder, how did that happen? It's because we're making decisions based on the short term versus making decisions on the long term.
Right. This is the other reason, that I'm not a big fan, of the DSO model for myself. For other people, I don't particularly care what other practices do and if that's how they want to do it. For me, it never really appealed to me because on the kind of employee doctor side of things, you forfeit a lot of this flexibility. You forfeit a lot of this self-determination that we've been talking about. You do it in exchange, I suppose, for, a paycheck or a constant stream of patients or for being able to skip out on some of the managerial responsibilities of being an owner. But I think you forfeit a lot. And then from the other side, the concept of for some people, I guess, being a regional manager of 10 to 12 locations,
makes them feel good.
That appeals to them in some way. For me, I don't like the distance between myself and my patients in that situation. And I know people personally that have, as they've gone that, that's a whole nother level of increasing your treadmill. I mean, if we're talking about growing your practice, speeding up your treadmill, try growing the number of practices and getting into double digits that you're owning and managing and the associated stresses. I think there's some people who've gone down that path that maybe, don't enjoy that. So again, for some people, that's what they love and I'm all in favor of it. But for me and in my kind of sustainable lifestyle goals, that doesn't quite fit my personality.
Yeah. And I think you're hitting on two key things that I keep coming back to. One is the idea of lifetime goals, and the other is the highest and best use of our time. When we figure those two things out, we can live an integrated, if you want to call it balanced, but integrated life where you don't have to retire. You don't have to have a giant something or other. But the question here, number one, is why are you doing what you're doing? You haven't said that, but in a way you've said it a number of times in saying that that the idea of retiring early doesn't appeal to you. Distance from your patients doesn't appeal to you. There's some motivational things that are at your core that drive you forward, that cause you to do what you want to do. I think this is missing for a lot of practices and a lot of dentists, especially guys who are older. The closer you were born in the industrial age, the more likely you are to not understand the whole concept of you personally having a big why. Or why do you exist? Well, I exist to work for the company. That's why I exist. And if I own my own company, then I exist to work for my practice. And so what are the things that drive you that are bigger than dentistry, that you can use dentistry to help you develop those things? What are some of the things that are much longer lived things and much bigger motivations?
Yeah, I think that's an important question that everyone has to ask. For me, certainly, the times that I'm the most happy outside of my practice are when I'm outdoors with my family. I've narrowed it down, and that's what it is. And that can be in the winter here. It's skiing, and we ski a lot. We're getting into snowshoeing and winter hiking and some other things as well. In the summer, it's usually hiking. I love going out on a boat, although the season here is so short that I don't own a boat because I can't justify it for the 8-week New England summer that we have. But I love being outdoors with my family, spending time with them in nature. I love that. In my practice, for me, we talk a lot about systems and things, and all of that's very important. I certainly love to see my practice grow and thrive and be financially successful. But at the end of the day, when I come home, what really is rewarding for me is spending time with patients, developing that connection. And I have to kind of constantly tell myself, because my natural setting is to kind of retreat into my office and work on some marketing campaign or email my financial coordinator about something that's going on, and work on development of the business, which I really like. But at the end of the day, I don't find that to be totally fulfilling. So I have to remind myself, get back out there, really spend time with patients, ask them what's going on, make those personal connections. At the end of the day, that's really what sustains and drives me forward. And then lastly, I love being involved. Part of the fun of being someone of some level of prominence in our community as an orthodontist is the ability to be involved in all sorts of charitable and other organizations, both volunteering my time on nonprofit boards, being involved with our church, but financially as well. I mean, one thing that we've spent a lot of our money on is charitable organizations, and seeing how we can make a difference, and what we're able to contribute matters, especially in a smaller community. To me is really rewarding. So, I definitely try to keep those things in my mind, so that I don't get lost too much in the weeds of implementation and logistics, and that I try to focus on the things that, are at the end of the day going to make me happy and not feel totally burned out after a long week.
Yeah, I so appreciate that. I think, again, it's something we need to think about the long term and the long haul. What is life about? In the final analysis, all you're going to have at the end of it is relationships and memories, and a legacy that comes from those things. And so I love that you have that emphasis on the personal connection, that's critical for you to have happiness at work and at home. And again, a lot of us are kind of nerdy. We have a tendency to want to just hole up.
Yep.
But I had somebody say something similar to this to me 40 or 50 years ago, and I morphed it into this. The dirty little secret in life is that the happiest people on earth are solving somebody else's problem.
That's totally true.
Not their own.
You are right that this is not my default setting. I'm kind of an introvert, person that likes to read over the manual of something. I mean, but I've learned through experience that just doesn't make me happy. I just returned on Sunday from a trip. I took my brother with me. We went to Uganda all last week, and we volunteered in a nonprofit dental thing there. And we had a wonderful time. We were able to raise money to buy them a generator for their clinic.
That's great.
We got to have time to go whitewater rafting on the Nile River. And so what you said about, the relationships and the memories, I feel like I've got to create time for these things, and I'm going to shut the practice down for a whole week. And this whole, if I got bags under my eyes, it's because I've worked like crazy all this week, making up for being gone last week. We've had a wild week in the office. But at the end of the day, that's why I love traveling, and being with, because that's what you take with you. And to me, that's more valuable than, I'm not a car guy. We live in a fairly modest home, and but for me, having those experiences, travel, volunteer, family, that to me is just so rewarding, and that's where I prefer to spend my time and money.
Well, I think this is a key message, not just for dentistry, but since that's where we focus, that's where we want to give that message. What are you doing this for?
Yeah.
And people need to ask that question and be able to answer it. A great exercise is to sit and write down longhand, write down what your life and your practice looks like 10 years from now. What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? How is it helping you? How is it working for you? But we need to know clearly. We need to see our future clearly and then begin to make decisions today based on that. And I think you've done that. It sounds like you've figured out what your highest and best use of your time is. And in some cases, it's not even what you enjoy the most, but it's the highest and best use of your time. And I think that's a critical piece of this. If we're going to figure out how to get our practice to serve us, then we've got to figure out what is it that is the few things that we need to do well. We've got a summit we do once a quarter called the GOT Summit. It's behind the Get Off the Treadmill podcast, Get Off the Treadmill Summit. And this is the whole point of that, is to figure out, to get dentists to figure out why they're doing is, how do I actually get off to the treadmill so that I enjoy going to my practice every day rather than dreading it because I'm doing things I shouldn't.
And Chuck, your materials, I've read your book. My favorite is the Making Money is Killing Your Business book, which I've recommended and even sent to a couple of my friends. And what I love about your approach is that you take these, we've been talking maybe a little bit about these kind of esoteric principles, and maybe someone listening, thinks this is all just kind of pie in the sky stuff. But what I love about your approach is I feel like you do a very good job taking that and then really connecting it with some proactive and implementable steps that people can do to actually say, okay, how do I connect where I am to where I want to be in a way that really makes sense and even fits those kind of left brain people out there?
Yeah, I think I didn't realize this early on. I'm not a career consultant. I'm not a coach. I'm not an advisor. I'm a business guy. Like I said, built 12 businesses in 8 industries on 4 continents. And I'm just a business guy who figured all this stuff out. And now I love helping other people do it. And so, yeah, that's what our GOT Summits are. They come and they find their big why. They do a 2-page strategic plan. They figure out how to do freedom mapping and real on the ground, in the trenches stuff that we do in our business today. Everything I teach other people, I'm doing. It's not stuff I sat around and said, well, what can I sell people? Let me come up with something that I can sell people. No, these are real life bullets. It's very practical, tactical stuff. Wait, I want to give you a chance to just wrap things up here with this whole idea of integrating your personal, professional, family lives. What's one thing you could share with our listeners out there today to sort of put a bow on this?
I think the biggest thing that people need is to give themselves the permission to make these decisions. Sometimes when I've made decisions that ultimately have made me very happy in the long run, they felt very uncomfortable or awkward in the short run. And like I say, I think sometimes the feedback we get from people is, you can't do that, or that's not how it's done, or they just don't share the vision, and that's okay. They don't need to. And also, you're not going to make every decision correctly. So I've certainly experimented with things that have been colossal failures, and I've had to go back and tell my wife and my team, that was a horrible mistake. But I'd rather have tried it than not. So I think giving people permission to make decisions, to try things. If you're unhappy, you've got to do something different in order to get to happy. And that's what I would encourage all the listeners to do.
Awesome. Well, how can we get a hold of you? How can people connect with you if they want to learn more about how you're building your practice and your podcast? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I'm the host of a podcast that's geared primarily towards orthodontists, but certainly I think any dental professional would find a lot of value in that. You can find us on iTunes or any other podcast source. It's Elevate Orthodontics Podcast. Our website is elevateorthopodcast.com. You can check out our practice at keenortho.com, or we're certainly on Facebook. Or if you want to send me a message on Facebook, that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me if you've got any questions or I can help in any way.
There he is, folks. Dr. Lance Miller, the star of Keen Orthodontic Specialist. It's been a joy to have you on, Dr. Lance. Look forward to doing this again.
Thanks, Chuck.
If this podcast was helpful, please subscribe by computer or by phone, or connect with us at www.gotsummit.com, 2 T's, G-O-T-T summit.com. That stands for Get Off the Treadmill. We have those summits quarterly for dental practitioners only. Or connect with us at www.chuckblakeman.com, or email us at grow@cranksetgroup.com. Let's get off that treadmill. Let's get into the participation age. I look forward to seeing you in the next podcast. Thanks.